The cabin was unusually quiet for a first-class section. The kind of quiet that existed only when people were pretending not to notice tension. Soft engine noise hummed beneath polite conversations and the clink of cutlery, the sound carefully curated to signal comfort and order. Passengers sat in wide leather seats, dressed in tailored suits, silk scarves, and carefully chosen expressions of entitlement, each of them occupying the space as if it had been designed specifically for them. In the middle row, a black woman sat upright, calm and composed, her posture reflecting confidence earned through years of navigating spaces where she was never meant to feel entirely welcome. Around her neck rested a gold cross necklace, simple yet unmistakable, catching the overhead light whenever she moved. It was not flashy, not oversized, just present, resting against her skin as naturally as her breath. Across the aisle, a flight attendant stood stiffly, jaw tight, eyes fixed not on safety procedures or passenger needs, but on that necklace, as though it disrupted the aesthetic order of the cabin. The flight attendant leaned closer, lowering her voice, though the sharpness in her tone carried further than she intended. She gestured toward the woman's chest, her finger hovering uncomfortably close, violating personal space under the disguise of authority. The words came out clipped and rehearsed, as if this was not the first time she had practiced them. Remove it or leave the plane. The sentence hung in the air like turbulence, sudden and disorienting. Nearby passengers froze, their faces shifting from curiosity to discomfort. Some pretended to scroll on their phones, thumbs moving though their eyes betrayed attention. Others stared openly, sensing drama but unwilling to choose a side. The woman looked up slowly, her eyes steady, her expression unreadable. She did not raise her voice. She did not flinch. She simply asked, why? The question seemed to irritate the flight attendant more than outright defiance would have. She straightened, repeating herself with more authority, citing vague policies about dress code and passenger conduct. The explanation was thin, inconsistent, and painfully selective. Religious symbols had never been a problem before, not when they rested on pale skin, not when they matched the dominant narrative of respectability. The woman listened carefully, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing controlled. She glanced around, noticing the small reactions, the tightening shoulders, the uneasy shifting, the way people leaned away as if conflict were contagious. She knew this moment well. It was the moment when dignity was tested, when silence was expected, when compliance was demanded not for safety, but for comfort. A man seated a few rows back cleared his throat, as if considering intervention, then thought better of it. Another passenger whispered to her companion, eyes darting back and forth, their words swallowed by fear of involvement. The flight attendant, emboldened by the lack of immediate resistance, pointed again at the necklace. She spoke louder now, enough for others to hear, performing authority as much as enforcing it. Rules are rules, she said, though no written rule existed. The implication was clear. This space was not meant to accommodate difference unless that difference was invisible. The woman took a slow breath, grounding herself. She asked for the attendant's name. The request landed like a challenge. For a moment, the power dynamic shifted. The attendant hesitated, then responded sharply, insisting on compliance rather than accountability. That was when the woman reached into her bag and calmly pulled out her phone. She did not announce she was recording. She did not threaten legal action. She simply placed the phone on her armrest, screen dark but present. A quiet witness. Something changed immediately. The attendant's confidence faltered. Her eyes flicked toward the device, then toward the other passengers, suddenly aware of an audience. Authority thrives in shadows, and suddenly the light was too bright. The woman spoke, her voice even, controlled, carrying the weight of lived experience. She stated her seat number, her ticket class, and her understanding of airline policy. She explained that her necklace was a religious symbol, that it did not violate any safety regulation, and that she was being singled out. She did not use the word racism yet. She did not need to. It lived between every sentence, woven into the pauses and the stares. The surrounding silence grew heavier. A few passengers nodded subtly, offering silent support. One woman across the aisle folded her arms, her expression hardening in solidarity. The flight attendant interrupted, attempting to regain control, but the interruption only exposed her frustration. She threatened to call security, to delay the flight, to escalate the situation further. Each threat sounded less convincing than the last, hollow echoes of power without foundation. The woman did not respond with fear. She asked again, calmly, why she was being asked to remove her necklace when others wore visible symbols without issue. She gestured toward a man wearing a large signet ring, another with a prominent chain. The inconsistency was undeniable, hanging in the air like evidence. At that moment, another crew member approached, drawn by the raised voices. He assessed the scene quickly, eyes moving from the attendant to the woman to the surrounding passengers. He asked what the issue was. The attendant spoke first, her words tumbling over each other, stripped of their earlier authority. She framed it as a misunderstanding, a policy concern, a minor issue. The woman then spoke, concise and factual, recounting exactly what had been said. She did not embellish, she did not accuse. She let the truth stand on its own. The crew member frowned, listening carefully. He asked about the policy in question. The attendant could not produce it. Her explanation unraveled under scrutiny, each sentence weaker than the last. The tension in the cabin shifted again, this time away from the woman and toward the person who had challenged her right to exist comfortably in that space. The crew member apologized to the woman, quietly but clearly. He assured her there was no issue with her necklace and that she was free to remain seated. The apology was not dramatic, but it was public enough to matter. The attendant stood there, flushed. Her authority evaporated. She muttered something under her breath, stepping back, avoiding eye contact. The woman nodded, accepting the apology without triumph. She picked up her phone and placed it back in her bag. Around her, the cabin exhaled. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, but something fundamental had shifted. The illusion of neutrality was gone. The incident had unfolded, exposing how quickly comfort becomes conditional when power goes unchecked. As the plane prepared for takeoff, whispers spread. Some passengers praised the woman's composure, others criticized her for making a scene, ignoring who had actually created it. This, too, was familiar. Accountability often feels like inconvenience to those untouched by injustice. The woman gazed out the window as the aircraft taxied, her reflection faint against the glass. She thought about how many times she had been asked to shrink, to explain herself, to justify her presence. She thought about how often such moments went undocumented, unchallenged, quietly absorbed into memory. The flight attendant avoided her for the rest of the journey. Service was handled by someone else, efficient and polite, but emotionally distant, yet the damage lingered. An internal report would likely be filed. Language would be spilled. The word racism would be replaced with misunderstanding. Training would be promised. Consequences, if any, would be invisible to those affected. This was how systems survived, by reframing harm as error rather than intent, by protecting comfort instead of confronting truth. When the plane landed, passengers gathered their belongings, returning to their individual lives. Some would tell the story later, altering details to suit their comfort. Others would forget it entirely. The woman stood, adjusting her necklace, feeling its familiar weight against her skin. It was more than jewelry. It was identity, faith, resilience. She walked down the aisle with her head high, aware that she had done nothing wrong, yet had still been required to defend her right to exist without humiliation. This is how racism unfolds, not always through shouting or slurs, but through policies applied selectively, through authority exercised without accountability, through moments designed to test how much someone will tolerate. It unfolds in premium cabins and everyday spaces alike, wherever power assumes itself unquestioned. And it is challenged not only through outrage, but through calm resistance, through documentation, through refusing to disappear. The image of that moment would circulate later, stripped of context by some, weaponized by others. But the truth remained in the details, in the pointing finger, the steady gaze, the necklace that became a problem only because of who wore it. Racism depends on silence. It thrives when witnesses look away. In that cabin, for a brief moment, it was forced into the open, exposed, undeniable. The story does not end with applause or viral justice. It ends with awareness, with discomfort, with questions that linger long after landing. How many times does this happen unnoticed? How many complot because the cost of resistance feels too high? How many are told, to remove pieces of themselves to make others feel comfortable. Until those questions are answered honestly, racism will continue to unfold, quietly and publicly, demanding to be named. This was not about a necklace. It was about power, perception, and the fragile conditions placed on belonging. And as long as those conditions exist, stories like this will keep repeating, unfolding in different forms, in different places, carried by people who refuse to be reduced to silence.